What do we know about the various groups of militants fighting the Bashar al-Assad government in Syria? Where have the al-Qaeda fighters come from, and are they getting support by various countries? On this edition of The Debate, we look into concerns over the rising wave of terrorism in Syria and ask who is responsible.
The Syrian army is continuing its thrust into areas held by foreign-backed insurgents. The bodies of militants killed by the army are littering the ground. People in this area on the outskirts of the Syrian capital Damascus have been told by the insurgents that the army will massacre people if it recaptures the region.
They spread rumors that the government forces would come and kill us, but now it seems that no one is getting hurt under the protection of the government forces.
The active presence of al-Qaeda offshoots in Syria has been discussed a lot recently. Al-Qaeda is said to be forming the backbone of the insurgency against the Syrian government. The leader of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, has repeatedly called on the terrorist organization's operatives to throng into Syria and join the fight against President Bashar al-Assad. The fact has even alarmed the staunch Western supporters of the insurgents, although there are no signs they will change their policy on the situation in Syria. Among the Western governments, the US is apparently turning a blind eye to the presence of al-Qaeda in Syria. Observers believe that the US wants Syria to be weakened and destroyed in order to change the regional balance of power in favor of Israel.
The United States is aiming to weaken Bashar al-Assad's army first and then to drain off Syria's energy so as to weaken the country to the maximum extent. And all this is to serve Israel.
Israel is also not sitting by idly as the violence rages on in Syria. An Israeli army general has said Syrian government forces are using chemical weapons against the insurgents. He has, however, made no comment on reports that chemical weapons are being used by the militants. By issuing such statements, Israel is believed to be trying to pave the way for Western military intervention in Syria with the aim of toppling Assad. Efforts are also underway to drag Hezbollah and Lebanon into the conflict in Syria. Western governments and their regional allies claim that Hezbollah forces are fighting the insurgents alongside the government troops in Syria. As for al-Qaeda, many believe that the group is in a tacit alliance with the West over Syria. Meanwhile, despite claims that al-Qaeda is an enemy of Western countries and Israel, the group's history shows us that Muslims have borne the brunt of al-Qaeda operations and that it has not carried out a single attack against Israel. Al-Qaeda's actions in Iraq, Pakistan and elsewhere in recent years, as well as its current activity in Syria, shed light on the real nature of the group.
Joining the debate live from London is Mr. Danny Mackey. He is a Syrian political activist, and also live in Berkeley, Lee Kaplan, an investigative journalist. Welcome to the debate, gentlemen. My first question to Lee Kaplan in Berkeley. Mr. Kaplan, what do you think about the role of al-Qaeda in Syria? What are they after? Do they just want to topple the Assad government? What next?
Well, Al-Qaeda, of course, wants to do the best for Al-Qaeda. I object to some things in your report as not being accurate because the Free Syrian Army, which is fighting Bashar Assad right now, is not completely controlled by Al-Qaeda, although there are Al-Qaeda elements in it. The U.S. government, of course, is not happy about that, and they're trying to take precautions to keep that separated. Although I will admit it's a very Gordian knot type of problem, having the Al-Qaeda still mixed in there somewhat at the same time that you're fighting the Assad regime.
Let's get Danny Mackey on this as well. Mr. Mackey, what do you think about the Al-Qaeda fighters? First of all, who do you think they are? Where have they come from? And do you think that they are getting support from any country?
Well, of course, the majority of al-Qaeda fighters within Syria have been receiving much support from regional countries, from Turkey to Saudi Arabia to Qatar. There has been funneling of weapons and arms, militants streaming in from Syria's border countries with other states. So the presence of al-Qaeda is known, it is certified by numerous states, and it is also stated by the United Nations and other states within the Security Council. The fact that we can say there is a separation between the Free Syrian Army and al-Qaeda is strategically incorrect and factually flawed, because we do do comprehend that the Free Syrian Army, in a military sense, are destroyed. There is no real big pushes by the Free Syrian Army, and the majority of rebel forces now are Al-Qaeda jihadists, and they are jihadists who belong to an ideology which is based on extremism and radicalization. So there is no real big difference between the Free Syrian Army and Al-Qaeda. What we could argue is that the Free Syrian Army was a facade which at the start was presented as a secular, moderate fighting group, but now the insurgency has replaced the Free Syrian Army with Al-Qaeda, known as their affiliates in Al-Nusra Front. So the biggest fighting forces in Syria, fighting the Syrian government at this current moment in time, are Al-Qaeda forces who have come from many numerous countries. And as former Arab UN peace envoy to Syria, Al-Akhtar Ibrahimi, he stated that over 40,000 foreign fighters are now in Syria. The majority of them are radical extremists who belong to the school of thought of Al-Qaeda. So their presence is a real problem for the future security of Syria and the regional stability of other countries. And the fact that the majority of them are from Chechnya, Afghanistan, Libya, Tunisia, these are people who have fought the Americans in Iraq, they've fought in Afghanistan. So there is a sense of theatre. Syria has become a theatre for jihad, a theatre for terrorism, and this has drawn Al-Qaeda into a much bigger geopolitical struggle against the Syrian government, and this is directly supported by the Western countries.
What you said there, if we could just raise a question to Mr. Kaplan on this as well. Now, Mr. Kaplan, a lot of analysts have been giving out reports saying that a lot of these foreign fighters who are right now in Syria have been coming in from those countries mentioned there, Libya, Iraq. They've been flooding into Syria, and a lot has been said about how Turkey has been facilitating this, allowing its borders to be used for these terrorists. And some have even been saying that if NATO wasn't complicit in this, or if the United States wanted to, it could have at least acted against it, but it didn't.
Well, the United States actually is acting against it. The United States is concerned about human rights violations there also. It is working right now. The State Department is working with the Turks and the Saudis to try and stem the flow of al-Qaeda and to try to get humanitarian aid to the people in the resistance who are not supportive of al-Qaeda. I beg to differ with the gentleman who just said that the majority of the Free Syrian Army are al-Qaeda.